I would like to introduce to you the IRS whisperer that's shouting about unbelievable results he achieves on behalf of his dream clients and the students he coaches at IRS tax resolutions through his dream clients. And he teaches those on behalf of the clients that are a part of that academy. A proud father and CPA that's going where no CPA has gone before, hailing from the Space Coast of Florida. It is a pure joy to bring to you the expertise and one-of-a-kind experience that only he can. Let me introduce to you the Veganator, the dream firm leader of Daniel Henn CPA, the one, the only Dan Henn. Thank you so much for joining us today. Dan, how are you doing?
Thank you for the wonderful introduction, Tyler. The Veganator. I haven't heard that one before, but I'll take it.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, you clearly are someone who takes care of your diet. Just out of curiosity, since we are talking a little bit about the Veganator term here, what led you to decide to be a vegan? Is that something, a health choice, philosophical? What was that all about for you?
Well, as the short story as I can make it, I've been vegan for 2.5 years. I was my wife and my oldest daughter went vegan now probably 8 or 10 years ago, and so my wife was good at first, and then she was cooking the meat, and then the meat got a little less and a little less, and then my meat was usually only at my Rotary meeting. I would have my bacon, and then I had an experience on a trip where, I usually would take a trip and that's when I would have my meat. And I think I overdid it one trip and I was sick for like a week. So, shortly thereafter, I actually went full vegan. So it was kind of out of necessity. And then, I also had a gluten allergy that I had before that, and, just a number of other things. But, do I miss it? Yes. When I smell barbecue or a steak cooking, it's like it's killing me. But the thought of the getting sick over it is keeping me away from it now. But I don't regret it one bit. A lot of people have said to me how much looks like I lost weight and I feel better. So I don't miss it at all.
Hard to argue with results like that. And when your body tells you something, it's usually a really good idea to listen to it. So way to stick to it and have the willpower for it. Let's go ahead and transition a little bit into the story of Dan and his accounting firm. So give us just that high level overview of when you got started in your accounting firm, what led you to start your entrepreneurial journey. Just give us that understanding of when this all began for you.
Well, my basic quick history is I kind of say I went like this. I started a small practice in Tampa, working for an EA, worked at a CPA firm, went to work at KPMG in a big national firm, worked for them in 2 offices from St. Pete and Orlando. And then I ended up leaving them and kind of worked my way down to a BDO Seidman office, to a small local firm, which moved me over here into the Space Coast of Florida, where I am now. And basically that was 16 years of working for other people. And finally, I just kind of got tired of the politics of it, and finally looked into starting my own thing, and I did. So that's been 11 years ago now. And this is now my 28th tax season that I'm dealing with. It's hard to believe I've been doing it that long. So that just lets you know how old I am when you can, do the math. And most of our people here hopefully can do the math. But I started out 11 years ago, and I was kind of like, okay, what do I do? I knew how to do some of the basic networking, rubbing elbows, meeting people. I jumped in at the chamber, met a lot of people, which led me to being in BNI. I've been in my BNI group now for 11 years, been a member of the local Cocoa Beach chamber for 11 years. And that has helped me with a lot of people, which today, has helped me tremendously with referrals and, with doing a few other things, right, with SEO and having all of that stuff set up. And I think it's just, as time has gone on, I've done the things I think I've done. Two main things that I would say that I have done right. There's probably a bunch of others, but one is Not being afraid to outsource in certain regards. So like with website and doing that kind of stuff, I've hired another service. I use Tax Pro Marketer to originally set that up. Um, and and then the coaching, getting coaching from others. I happen to find another gentleman who's in the CPA space years ago. Went to his conferences, became part of his coaching program, and at the time was a big leap in terms of the cost of what it was, but it has helped me out tremendously, and it ultimately, and I'll probably say this a few times over the course of this call today, but is the uh, implementing, being a doer of things. There's another guy I follow that he calls it, failure to implement, it causes problems. And so I became a doer of things. And so once I've done that, I'm not afraid about education. I'm not about the trying to get the ton of alphabet soup letters behind my name. It's more about the education and getting the knowledge. I met my buddy Jason Bowman. It's been 8 years ago now that I met him. I actually met him because of my other coach at his conference. He was a speaker there, and I got involved with tax resolution, which is also then led me to expanding into more IRS exam representation. And so, but working with Jason and learning how to deal with that, I learned what more value pricing was and how to get that better. Now that from the tax prep side, that's taking me a little bit longer. But I'm in a small city called Rockledge, Florida. There's about 27,000 residents. The whole county is about 600,000. And, I mean, it's still a smaller community type of area. And I'm charging, my base fee starts at 600 for a 1040, 1400 for a business return. Where, when I hear other practitioners, it was a CPA, and actually she was in this other group that I was in. She was from Iowa, charging $125 for a 1040. Now this was probably 5 years ago, but still, she wouldn't be a whole lot more if she didn't learn to do it. And when I hear people talking about fees like that, it's like, it boggles my mind. I don't, if you are a tax preparer, and I don't care whether you're a CPA, EA, attorney, or even an unenrolled person, as the term is, the knowledge, the experience, everything that we have has a value. And everybody would be doing a whole lot better if they would really charge what their value is. We're not trying to be H&R Block or Joe Smo charging $50 to $100 of return. It just boggles my mind when people do that. But ultimately, I've been now 11 years. I've been working with you since last October. So it's actually a happy 6-month anniversary working together since I joined your group.
Happy anniversary.
And I think, and I'm sure this is probably going to be a question later, but I'll probably go ahead and transition to that now. But I think the biggest thing that working for, I come in with a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge. I know you know me a lot more personally in terms of my experience in terms of marketing and other things, and I'm probably smarter than the average bear when it comes to that stuff.
Definitely.
But I think working with a coach, it helps motivate me. There's a sort of an accountability to it, and it helps me do more implementing of things. I'm more into, obviously one of your tenets is obviously developing systems and having that in your practice, which I'm still working on. I'm like everybody else. I feel like I'm a little further along than probably the normal tax professional. But developing systems, and working through those types of things and trying to automate as many processes as can be. I work with a separate group that helps me because I use Infusionsoft with, amongst other, I use Calendly, and I link a lot of these types of things together, and as best we can have things automated on a drip process, and it becomes seamless. I mean, the Tax Pro Marketer, I get a weekly email from them, and I sent out this email last week, and I've gotten more replies out of that email that goes to my client, my client base, and it's amazing. But I mean, and it's a generic email that is kind of done for me, and it inserts their name in there. and it goes out to everybody, but they look like it. I personally sent them an email kind of thing. So, anything that I can do to try to make the jobs easier, make it more efficient so that we can accomplish more, have better customer service, is better.
Excellent. Well, there's so much to unpack from that answer, Dan, and thank you for sharing what you did right there. Talk about an opening foray, my Lord.
Right.
So let's just summarize what we just heard here. Essentially, had the very traditional career path of a lot of accounting professionals, went from one firm to another, got into more of that Big Four atmosphere, realized there were some political dealings in there, and said, I'm going to go out on my own, and also pursued what is, again, more of that traditional marketing approach, which is we're going to rub some elbows, we're going to do the networking events. And Dan has done that very successfully for a number of years, and he's still continuing to do it because it continues to bear fruit for him, which is a very good marketing system for the type of clients that he wants to attract and win. So that is fantastic. And there's a major theme that ran through that answer, which we're going to dive a little bit deeper in here. That is, to me, a major component to the success we've had at Dream Firms, is a major component of the success that Dan has had, and a major component of success that any entrepreneur who you're just looking at and saying, wow, right? We're paying attention to them. What are they doing? What's going on? Is staying coachable. Dan found himself in an environment where he got involved with coaching early on in his firm's trajectory, and it has allowed him to not only be more successful himself, but to connect with more successful people, or people who are similarly successful to himself, and build this incredibly powerful network of individuals. And I want to just, before we go into the next set of questions here, I want to take a minute to just dive a little bit into the IRS Tax Resolution Academy, I believe is the name, and the individual that you referenced earlier. But before I do that, the one thing that people are doing that's allowing them to get to a higher level of success is staying coachable. This is the one thing Russell Brunson attributes his success to. And Russell Brunson's like the best marketer in the world. And he says, it's because I stay coachable. I'm always listening. I'm always paying attention. I'm always having that accountability to help make sure I make progress and not just stay in the listening mode, but actually get to the implementation mode, which is a lot of what Dan shared as a part of that opening response. So Dan, tell us and our listeners a little bit about the IRS Tax Resolution Academy, and tell us a little bit about your role there and what you really feel the impact of IRS tax resolution can be when successfully applied the right way.
Well, let me just give a little basic start. When I mentioned my buddy Jason Bowman. I saw him speak at a conference 8 years ago, and he opened my eyes to the fact that I was doing work that I wasn't billing for, because it's not uncommon that we do a tax return. Somebody owes money, they can't pay it in full. And so we go set them up in a payment plan, and we just include it as part of a $200, $300 fee. And probably not even 6 months after I met him, I had 3 clients where I had to get them set up in a payment plan. I called the IRS. I was on the phone for on hold for 30 minutes. I got on the call and I was talking to this agent for 30 minutes. I dealt with 3 clients, basically about 10 minutes apiece, got them all set up in a payment plan. And when I was done, I billed them each $250 for that service, which was at least how much I charged them for the tax return that I had just finished, that they owed on. And when I looked at that and I started thinking, well, that means I had the equivalent of about a $1,500 hour with that. And at that time, if I was charging anything hourly, it was probably more like $75 an hour, maybe $100 an hour. I didn't know my true worth at that point in time. And so since I've learned how to I just had a phone call this morning, literally before our call, with actually somebody I know in our community that's well known. And she's got tax problems. She's got large penalties. She may owe about $100,000 in taxes. And I just quoted her $1,000 for the phase of what we call the investigation of liability, $2,000 to get her set up in a payment plan, and then probably another $1,500 to write a penalty abatement reasonable cause letter. And so, I mean, that's, what is that, $4,500 that I'll earn. And honestly, the time involved in that might be 2 to 3 hours in terms of time. So when you look at, and even if it was all my time, that's still pretty good. But in a lot of cases, I have my staff who is handling and dealing with a lot of that. Um, so it's mind-boggling when you think about it. That even with like getting somebody into a currently non-collectible status, where they kind of take their case and they just set it off to the side. I charge $3,000 at a minimum of $3,000 for that, and in most cases, I'm probably 5-6 hours into those types of cases. I mean, they're a little bit more involved. Offering compromises start at 5. So and then when it comes to the exam side of the house, which is what we're doing more of now, Tax Resolution Academy is something Jason's been doing it for a number of years. I joined with him about 4 years ago. So we've been teaching live continuing education. Obviously that hasn't happened in the whole last year, but we've been doing a lot of webinars. We've created this whole curriculum of classes for tax resolution and exam I'm still working on some of the exam stuff, but my exam work as my tax practice, I'm billing, $300 an hour for that type of work. Most practitioners wouldn't even charge anything for like that for that type of work. And I probably could still even charge more and get it because it's specialized knowledge. The problem with tax prep is it's the necessary evil, like bookkeeping, like payroll. It has to be done. It's the tax resolution exam stuff. People need that help. They don't want to deal with the IRS. They're scared of the IRS. Or it makes them angry, which is also not in their favor. So it has a greater value. But even the tax prep still has a value. Now, do I get people who think oh, you're charging what for that tax return? No, I'll go find somebody else. We get people that say that, and and I say that's fine. We're not for everybody, but I think I get more. Okay, that sounds fair is the answer. And you'd be surprised. We actually had one of our members. He told this story that he's over in the like Sarasota, Bradenton area here in Florida. And he said he was charging, I think he said he was charging $200 for a tax return. And he said, I wanted to slow the flow of returns coming in because he just wanted to have a more capacity. So he raised his fee to 300. And it didn't seem to slow the rate of returns that came in. So he increased it to 400 and it still didn't seem to slow it down. So, the moral to that story is that he wanted to kick himself in the butt because of how much money that he's been leaving on the table there. Secondly, the other thing that I'm going to be doing here, and I finally kind of had the straw that broke the camel's back, is because I done very well is I've always raised my fees every year. 5 to 10% every year on probably 98% of the people every year. But when you're starting at $150 to $200 and you're increasing that, it takes a while to get up to a point where it's more meaningful. And I still have some people that are under probably $400, and it's finally time. I'm going to write them a letter. And there's going to be a handful of people that I keep because I have a heart for ministers. I have a heart for single moms. And usually there's got to be some other extra connection to it sometimes. But outside of that, if they're not at the $400 level, then they're going to get a letter that basically says, we're going to have to increase your fees, obviously, as nicely. And here's, some of the extras that we're going to have and do as part of that. And if they don't come and stay with me, that's okay, because it'll give me more capacity to be able to go after more $600 or more work, because I've raised it $50 a year for the last probably 5 years now. Actually 6 years, my base fee without looking back and feeling bad about it. And I still get people who, continue to come in with that. So does that kind of answer your question?
It definitely does. And there was a wide range of topics that we touched on there. But the primary one that I think is really valuable to everyone listening right now is that you must be very clear about what you are delivering. I know scope creep is an extremely common problem. And as Dan kind of said, it's sort of mind-boggling, both from the pricing perspective that we're competing against like national, just burn and churn tax returns, extremely low quality with our pricing, when we're delivering a higher degree of care. And normally we're doing additional services on top of it that we're not billing for. It's sort of confusing when you look at it from that lens, but when you're in it, when you're doing it, when you're actually just going through it and it's just sort of normal, it's just part of your process, because you don't really know what you don't know, especially when you're first starting out. And then you get to hear from other experts and other people in the industry, and then it informs your decisions on what you're doing with your practice. You go, wait a minute. It's not about the fact that it takes me 10 minutes or 20 minutes or however long it takes to do the respective task. It's about the impact it has on that person's quality of life when it's done the right way through a person who genuinely cares. And that is what we do in the service industry. We genuinely care. We pay attention to that person's unique situation, and then we apply our expertise to get them the best result possible. And the time it takes to do that is irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. And one last thing I want to pull from the answer that Dan shared there is I have a lot of clients or prospective clients usually that will come to me and they'll say, oh, I close, 90% of all the people I speak to. And they think it's a bragging right. And I say, hey, that's great. Do you know what that really tells me? That you're severely underpriced and people are taking advantage of it. And that's a problem. Or we're only looking at it from the referral point of view, and most of those should be slam dunks anyway. So there are nuances to all of these conversations and nuance for everyone's particular situation. But the main takeaway that can be applied to everyone here is be very careful about scope creep and define exactly what you are delivering in order to prevent that from happening. So let's go ahead and move forward here. Let's talk a little bit about your life before working with dream firms. To your credit, Dan, you talked about this a little earlier, where you've been investing in coaching. You've been ahead of the curve, so to speak, in a couple of various marketing angles. But I still want us to just kind of come back to before we started working together, and specifically why you felt it would be a good investment to start working with us.
Well, I've worked with varying types of coaches, just to start with that. And for me personally, obviously, when I had my initial, introduction call with you, or discovery call, I would be a better term. Sitting with you, obviously being, very personable, you seem very knowledgeable. Not only have that, but you have worked in our space. So having, know what we're actually going through. Now, is that necessarily 100% requirement? No, because I've worked with other coaches that they know and understand the basic principles, and they might be looking on a specific aspect of marketing or systems, and helping you to ferret that out. But the thing that I felt like I was personally getting stuck. I mean, I hadn't been really working with a coach for a little bit. And I think the thing that, again, your knowledge and experience, not only in our industry, but, looking at it from a marketing perspective, that your knowledge in, say, whether or not to use Google AdWords or Facebook ads, or, boosting a post. That was one thing, we've talked about, and you basically just said, give you the money instead of boosting the post, and so that obviously has value. And I tested it. I threw, $10-20 at it. I can throw something like that. Obviously, if you're doing that consistently, you can throw a lot of money away at it. And if you're not doing things correctly, but having some of that extra knowledge that you have, and obviously, and you work with coaches, you've talked about that in our group calls, and that you're always giving us new things that you're learning. And just like I will never profess to be the expert, 100% expert and know it all at anything. Am I, like I said, smarter than the average bear? Yes. But, I'm not going to be the to say that I'm the know-it-all. And it's always nice to work with somebody. It's kind of like, for me personally, being as a Christian, Pastors are probably one of the ones, who are up there preaching every week. They're telling us about things about what the Bible says and things like that, but they're humans too. And people we put them on the pedestal of that, and we have to realize that they're humans and that they're not infallible as well. So that's why, one of the reasons I like working with you is that, I know that you're always learning and you're always willing to share that. And for me, being a part of the Dream Firms group, I enjoy learning from you. I like hearing from the others. I also like sharing with others, my experience and knowledge, just like we're doing here. Because it's to me, it's very important. In fact, at a conference one time, it was another tax professional that I was sitting next to on a bus. We were going to some event, and I think she was in the Indianapolis area, and I was talking to her, and I said something to her about the double your fees theory. That if you doubled your fees, that statistically, if you only retained half your clients, you're still making the same amount of money doing half the work. So why wouldn't you do something like that? Well, it's the fear that most people have on it. Well, this woman actually did it, because I saw her the next year, and she was so thankful that I had talked to her and told her about that. And she was making, and statistically, from what I've heard from most people, maybe 70 to 90% is the actual retention from that. So you're actually making more money with less work in terms of that. And so now, it's those types of things I like to help impart, that knowledge and wisdom. And do I learn sometimes a ton of things? No, but I, again, because I'm more of the super user than the newer newbie that would, you benefit more from your practice, or you're working with the Dream Firms. And I don't want to say newbie, it's just the experienced professional that still doesn't know all of the marketing or some of the other tips and tricks that is also very helpful. And your program, I finally have gotten through 95% of everything, watching the videos and doing all of that stuff. And there's a lot of good material in there. I always talk, tease you a little bit that there's some things in there that are a little bit creepy, like, the cyber stalking and things like that. But, I get it. It totally makes sense, in terms of how it works. I mean, it's the good thing, bad thing about our society today, that we have a little bit of public voyeurism that's out there. But if it's out there, why, we can use it to our advantage, as long as we're using it for the right purposes, in terms of, searching out people on LinkedIn or Facebook and starting to build those relationships, because, ultimately at the end of the day, that's what it is building the relationship. So, but, at the end of the day, I've been with you for 6 months. The first 8 were part of the Dreams Firm, and now the Future Firms aspect. It's definitely well worth it, getting my money's worth in terms of that. In fact, I don't remember exactly. I looked at my gross revenues just a few weeks ago, but I want to say I was already, I think I was about $50,000 to $75,000 more year over year in terms of revenue, gross revenue. So, and I would definitely attribute, maybe not all of it to you, but, a good chunk of it. Yeah, not having it, huh, Tyler? It's
No,
all
I'm
because
not
of you.
having it. And you know exactly why, Dan, is
Right.
because while I believe that your decision to get unstuck, if we go back to really like why you
Right.
felt it was important, is yes, there's the knowledge. Yes, there's the experience running my own accounting firm that helps build that trust factor. But simultaneously, it was about getting into a relationship that held you accountable to making the progress you knew you should, you knew that you deserved. And that to me is, again, like whenever someone gets to this point in the call, it's always about, this is a symbiotic relationship. We are mutualistically benefiting one another, because I care about your progress and you care about your progress, but you are the one who's putting it in place at the end of the day.
Right.
I'm just going to hold your feet to the fire, not take too many excuses. And I think all my clients know that. And there's a big difference between excuses and beating yourself up. A lot of people are beating themselves up for not getting further faster, for setting sometimes unrealistic goals because they don't have the sounding board that they are for their own clients a lot of the time.
Right.
And so while they are literally delivering the experience that they need themselves, sometimes it's hard to get outside of that subjective experience and just make sure that we make progress day over day over day. And I'm not remotely surprised to hear about the growth that you've had. And I'm glad to know that I was able to play even just a small part in it. So that is absolutely fantastic to hear, Dan. And let's talk
Let me
about
add one
this
more
a
thing
little
there,
bit.
Tyler. One other thing
Go ahead.
that I do enjoy working with you and Maureen is that you guys are always positive. We had our hot seat call this morning, and one of the things you said to me was, because we were talking about an issue that I was having with an employee. And one of the things that you said was start with the problems, end with the wins. And so it's always about the ending in the positivity aspect of it. And while, it's not always, sunshine, roses, rainbows, and unicorns, but it's, you do need to have that because otherwise, I mean, sometimes our jobs, I don't know that we're second to dentists in terms of suicide, but, it is something that can really beat you up. I mean, look at what has happened, not only with the pandemic, with the IRS changes, with, SBA, with our clients in general. I mean, because you're dealing with the human element and you never know what you're going to get at the front door. We were even talking about a couple of experiences that we've had this past season with some client issues. So, but yeah, it's definitely the positivity of working with you guys is definitely another plus.
I really appreciate you saying that, Dan. And again, I think it's an extension of essentially just who we are as people. And sometimes people like to refer to us as like their personal cheerleaders. Like I want to
Right.
actually like cheer you on, but it's more about cheering you on to the right things. Like success leaves clues, and life will keep teaching the same lesson until you learn from it. And oftentimes it's about just saying like, okay, like you clearly are experiencing this same problem over and over again. And while we can be all cheery eyed and pretend like it's not a problem, that's not going to help us either. So to your point, it's like, yeah, let's identify the problems. Let's look at what's going on here, but let's put in a tangible, clearly defined set of actions that will prevent us from being stuck on this problem. And then by extension, let's celebrate the fact that even if we don't get the exact win that we're looking for, even if we don't make the perfect move, all we did is we made a decision faster, right? And that to me is one of the critical elements of coaching in general is I'm not here to make sure we make the right move 100% of the time. Anyone who suggests that that's going to happen is absolutely absurd and insane. And thankfully, I'm neither of those. But what I do believe what's about is if we make a decision quicker and we're not stuck, by extension, we experience the benefit of that decision sooner. And if that benefit is not necessarily a win, that's okay. But we can learn from the decision that we made where otherwise we wouldn't have learned anything. And then we get to inform a better decision the next time through. So I really appreciate you sharing that, Dan. Let's talk a little bit about just what it was like getting started with working with us, because I know I don't want to say there's like a black box or, a curtain we have to reveal, but give a little bit of that inside look into when you first started the program. And I know there's a little box behind you, which is now everyone gets that when they sign up. So that's part of something that we like to send out. You guys might see that in the group, but tell us a little bit about getting started with us, Dan, and then what that experience was like.
Well, it was kind of an interesting start because I actually when I started with you, it was early October technically, but I ended up delaying my start just because I had vacation. But then I started joining the group, and obviously, once, getting, goodies like that is nice. And getting welcomed in, having the prepared program, and obviously to a certain degree, even for somebody like me that's more experienced with a lot of this, it is a little overwhelming. I'm going to have to, say that, but and I get it because the Tax Resolution Academy group that we have has a lot of information and it is overwhelming. But you have this mapped out program that here, taking it in baby steps, and you've got it in an order with, I've got that, that's here in the box right here. So, and I've actually got a laminated one of these I have at my desk at home. But you've got the process, and here you got the milestones, as you call it, and you've got little boxes that can be checked as you're doing things. Everything has a reason and a purpose. Not that you have to necessarily do everything, but there are some steps that you could skip. There's some steps that you shouldn't skip. But starting with that process, actually showing up to the meetings, that the weekly meetings, because you've got obviously the two different groups, and I think I've been to 95% of them. I think I've missed one, and I don't necessarily always participate in every one, but I do pay attention. I do listen. I do take notes. I've got my book is right here, my Atomic Habits. And ironically, I actually, before this was another one. This was the book that you gave as part of the Dreams Firm one. And I actually listened to the Atomic Habits on our vacation, driving between place and place with my wife and I, and we actually enjoyed it very much. I would highly recommend that, whether they join your program or not, that's something that people should do. But there's a lot of things that I've learned. There's a lot of things I've done, as part of being a part of the group. But I think it was just, like I said, it's like anything. If you're going to join something and be a part of something, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. People think that it started with joining the chamber. If you join the chamber and just expect that, your name is on their website or in their material, your cards are on the wall, that business is just going to show up. It doesn't work that way. You've got to go there. You've got to be involved. You got to do things. So I have been steadily working through your program. I have been coming to the group meetings, and participating. And unfortunately, the one thing I haven't been able to get to is Maureen's technology call every week. And no offense, I'd rather see her than you, but I'm sure you get that a lot. But I enjoy being on those calls, and hearing other perspectives, other things. I've learned other softwares on how to automate certain aspects of things. I've learned other services that can be provided. Hearing Ine talk about her financial analysis and coaching that she does. Hearing Steve down, he's 3 hours down to the south of me here in Miami, and he's usually doing our calls from his boat or his RV on a Wednesday afternoon. And that would obviously be something I would want to aspire to. And so, just seeing some of those as other motivating things. Hearing Chris's, what did I call it? The boot camp of death that I said that he puts his tax preparers through. So there's a lot of things that I have learned as part of it. And like I said, not only that, but being able to have the one-on-ones with you monthly, the time to go through, talking through some things that are more specific to me, and that has been a help in terms of helping me take the next step and doing certain things. And again, just because I'm more advanced in the marketing aspect of things, I can talk higher level certain things with you that some of the other members probably wouldn't be able to. And not only that, but you're showing them other software that I don't use, but you have used some of the stuff that I have used, and so that's obviously a help to me as well. But working with your, coming back to your question is the, it was, it can be overwhelming, but I just tell people that, if you're going to work with Tyler and Maureen and their team, that you just got to do it. You got to be involved. You got to come and show up. Even if you play fly on the wall for the first few weeks, although I know you're not going to let them do that, you will learn more just by being there, and start that process. And a lot of practitioners, we're known as an industry that we're not very outgoing. We're not very we don't like to be the person in the front of the room, but I can tell you what, if you can learn to overcome your fears, that you're worth more and you can build more, you can be the expert and write a book or be a speaker in front of the room, even if it's you create the webinar or seminar yourself. And that, you can speak up and when, here's a story I always tell people. I coached my girls in youth soccer when they were kids. And I had my middle daughter. She was 12 years old. We had this awesome team that we had put together. It was an all-girls team. And there was this one girl that we had on our team, and she was left-footed. So we obviously put her on the left side of the field. And having somebody like that was awesome. And I always kept pushing her. You got to move up with the ball. She was a forward, and she would always move up with the ball. And I told her there's many times that ball just kind of dribbles across the front of the goal. And if you happen to be on the other side of that, you can get the easy goal. When she finally had that eye-opening experience where she was standing there and that ball went into the goal, she was so excited, and she was there every time after that, which just made our team even that much better. And so when people finally have that eye-opening experience, like the story I talked about, the guy raising his fees to try and slow the flow coming in, when people have that eye-opening experience, it's just mind-boggling, and you want to partly kick yourself, and you should, but it's what can you do with that new knowledge, and that's one of the things that working with the group and the team that that we have here has really helped me personally in getting that unstuck, taking the next step, being to implement again and doing more things.
So many amazing things to unpack from that answer, Dan, but I'm going to just summarize it very quickly because I want to start to move a little bit into open Q&A, and I've got two last questions that I'd like to ask you. But
okay,
you do get out of it what you put into it, but my moniker is that if you give me a little bit, you're going to get a lot back. And while yes, there can be overwhelm associated with our material, we do our very best to make it bite-sized. And to Dan's point earlier is I will oftentimes, all the time, excuse me, not often, all the time, I will understand your unique situation. And by extension, I'm not here to force someone who might be more advanced in marketing to go through the very beginning steps of marketing. And to Dan's point, it's still valuable to go through that. But
right.
Simultaneously, if you're stuck because you're working too much, guess what's going to happen? I'm going to say, no. We've got to focus on winning back your time right now so that you can even have the time to reinvest back into your growth, to reinvest into higher level services, whatever the case may be. So I really appreciate you saying that, Dan, because it's 100% correct, is that it can be overwhelming, but one step at a time. Right. And more importantly, what's the right step for you to take at this particular time? Fantastic. So let's just go ahead and accelerate just a tiny bit here. And just to clarify, how much did you add to your firm and in what time frame? I think you mentioned it earlier, but just.
Do you mean this so far this year?
Yep.
I think I'm up at least $50,000, and here we are, just past the middle of April. It's probably even a little more than that.
Pretty good, pretty good, and just getting started. What would you say to someone considering our services right now, Dan?
I think the biggest thing is I could say be open-minded, like you said earlier, being coachable, be willing for change. I wrote down earlier, something here was the definition of insanity is doing the same things over and over, expecting a different result. And if you're looking for a new result, you have to be open-minded and think, again, one of the words, you don't like the 3-letter word, that you use the word investment. And that if you look at it from the standpoint that if you work with Tyler, Maureen, and the team, that you're making an investment in yourself. And anytime you do that, and like I said, the first time I worked with a coach, I mean, he was charging me $7,000, and this was almost 10 years ago that I paid that. And that was a leap of faith for me at that time. I had to convince my wife because she wasn't as willing on that, but it is 100% one of the best decisions I ever made in my life was to spend that money And I've spent a lot more than that over the years. I think his coaching ended up going to 10 a year after that. And now he's charging even more for that coaching. So it's worth it. And if you, like I said, if you take the time, I say it's perfect for the person who is willing to make that change. If you're not willing to make that change, you're not willing to implement things and do things, then this isn't the program for you. But if you're willing to be coachable, if you're willing to think about things differently, because I always say that the joke is, why did the chicken cross the road? As an accountant, because that's the way we did it last year. That's what our industry knows, and so so you have to be willing for change, and we're not known for that, handling that very well. So if you're open for that, then this is perfect for working with you and the team.
Perfectly stated. And last question before we move to open Q&A. And just as a heads up, if anyone has a question that you would like to get answered by Dan, you got to get it in right now, because we got a lot that I've already see piling in. So go ahead and drop it in the Zoom chat. Go ahead and drop it down in the comment section down below, and we'll be more than happy to tackle that in just a moment here. So last question here, Dan, is what has surprised you the most when it came to growing your firm?
Surprised me the most. It's actually a very good question. I think it's just the challenges of trying to juggle and balance everything. Like you talked about, time management. I learned how to deal with that in terms of time management. I still struggle with it like anybody else, but I've learned to better control my time. Like, for example, I learned to Tuesdays, Thursdays is when I meet with clients, and Wednesday afternoon. I meet with them from 10 to noon and 1 to 4 on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and 1 to 4 on Wednesday afternoon. Wednesday morning is my marketing time. Mondays and Fridays, I generally will not meet with clients. That's for technical time. It's for the dealing with other issues or vacation if I wanted to have a 4-day weekend. That's kind of why I scheduled it. If you can't meet with me during those hours, you don't meet with me. It's just that simple. I rarely will, unless there's somebody really special or connected to an existing client that I think is special, I generally will not meet with people after hours. I can't tell you when the last time I actually met with a client on a weekend or late at night, because I've been burned on that many times. I just don't do it. If you can't meet with your doctor, meet with your doctor or dentist, then you can't do that with me. Okay, I'm not on call. I don't give my cell phone number out. I'm not a 24/7. There's no financial emergencies. You're going to need me on nights and weekends. So there's a lot of things that I learned to manage, my time with that. And with that has allowed me to, I think, do a lot more than the average person. But just starting a practice, it's difficult with practice management, the billing, the marketing, the employee management. There's a lot of things that are going on there. So, that's why time to me was very important.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And very quickly, just to summarize, we are always going to be making trades with respects to our time. And in order to get to a different result, you must think about how your time is accessible and the way in which you are investing your time. If your time is always accessible, phone pinging you, push notifications on your cell phone, email open all the time, social media open all the time, you're literally just saying, I'm free. Let me interrupt me. And Dan, I want to point this out. Dan was saying, I've got dedicated marketing time in my firm. And I can tell you right now, I'll say 95% of all accounting firms do not have a dedicated portion of the week in which they're going to block everything out, not allow it to interrupt them, and say, let's focus on growth for a little bit here. And then by extension, what happens? You get the return on that investment of well-placed time. Just bravo, Dan. Thank you for sharing that. Let's jump into Q&A. I've got Teresa. Love your take on value, Dan. How could you not love his take on value? That's what it's all about. Katrina, A Create Your Dream Firm leader, a Dream Firm leader herself. True worth. That's what's up, Katrina, 100%. Patrick, your program sounds interesting. I really need the accountability of the coach. There will be a link somewhere floating around here. You'll get to speak to one of our Dream Firm's advisor on the discovery call like Dan has been able to do himself not so long ago. That's led to the fantastic results he's experiencing right now. Lorena, congrats on the growth, Dan. That's fantastic. Jeff, Dan, like you, I have done numerous advisors or coaches. What makes Tyler better than the others?
Well, I would say one of the things that makes Tyler better than the others is, honestly, I'll say it this way, he's youthful, he's energetic, and there's something to at least that. Everything that he says and does is very genuine. Like he said earlier, he's very interested in our success. And obviously, not only, obviously he's doing this as a business, he's doing this to earn a living, but, and because he's been in our space, he's had a tax practice before. And so he knows what we've been through. Not everybody can say that. And I know that there's a number of coaches out there, and not to put anybody down, but, working with Tyler, has really, helped me advance. Like I said, even with being more the advanced user, it still helps to work with a coach. And quite honestly, again, just because I'm working with Tyler, I would highly recommend Tyler, but working with somebody is better than not working with anybody. So I would definitely encourage you to work with somebody, but Tyler is just the guy. He's got the program, he's got it put together, he's got the system set up. He's got things scheduled that are really nice, and you have to have that in a coach, somebody who is going to be able to answer, help you through and get you unstuck and deal with those big rocks that you need to deal with.
I appreciate you saying that, Dan. And I won't say that I'm better than anyone that you've worked with before. I'll say that there's differences in the way that a lot of people approach their coaching. And to Dan's point, do something, right? I really don't. You talk to Matt, we'll tell you straight up, I don't care if you really work with us. I'd love for you to, because I know what we're capable of, but simultaneously, please do something that will move you closer to your goals. And we know we're the most efficient choice for that, but I might be a little biased in my answer there, but appreciate that, Dan. Great question from Jeff as well. Hope to have you with us. Randy, future-proof your firm. Thank you for what you contribute to our group, Dan. Randy, thank you for chiming in and joining us. We'll see you on group in just another 5 minutes here. Edgar, I am just finishing my first tax season in 10 years. I used to be an industry accountant before this year. Would this program work for me? I'll take this one, Dan. Edgar, at the very least, explore it. Take the discovery call. Just have the conversation. But the answer is yes. Startup, 6-figure, 7-figure firms, owners, we are here to make sure that we account for your unique situation. We have a plethora of experience in all of these facets and tremendous results to boot. So would love to have you with us, Edgar. Again, book that call. Steven, when we join your program, do we work one-on-one with you, Tyler? Steven, 100%. One-on-one attention. It's what separates us from everyone else. I'm not here to fit you into the box and say, oh, there's the course, go do the course. It's like, no. While there is, yes, material that helps accelerate the process, I am here to work one-on-one with you. You'll learn more about that on the discovery call, Steven. Julie, another future-proof firm client. Dan is the man. Love what he brings to our group sessions. Dan is definitely the man, Julie. 100% agreed. Larry, I may have missed it. You do IRS tax resolution. Is that correct? You specialize in it. Excuse me.
Yes.
Excellent.
It's not the only thing I do, but yes, I specialize in that.
Absolutely. Kathy, love your interviews. Tyler, so insightful. Thank you very much, Kathy. Much appreciated. If you want to be someone who gets interviewed in the not so distant future, because you're creating your dream firm, doing all that fun stuff, book a call, learn more about that. Charlie, I'm ready to prioritize growth. I love the way you're thinking about that, Charlie. What's the link to learn more? It should be available somewhere in the comments section already. If you can't find it, just ping me directly on Facebook. Oliver, how do I work with you, Tyler? Man, we're getting, I think this should be clear by now, but there's a link where you can book a call, speak with our dream firm advisor, Matt. Matt is a freaking superhero as far as I'm concerned. He's awesome. He's incredibly knowledgeable, and he will give you all the information you need to make an informed decision. Robert, I'm on a vacation for the next 2 weeks, but would love to start when I come back. Should I book my call now or when I get back? Robert, to Dan's point earlier, we take our clients' situations into consideration. Book your call now so that you can get the slot that you want that is best for you, because we have a lot of people who are interested, needless to say. So please book your call now. That way you can meditate it on vacation. Let us know maybe where you're going in the chat as well. Very curious. Patrick, book my call for tomorrow. Let's do this. 100% Patrick, let's do this. Layla wants to know, do you work locally, Dan, or nationwide?
I'm actually nationwide. I mean, I've got clients actually. I actually should say worldwide, because I actually have clients in other countries as well. But I'll work where I mean, with today's technology, and obviously the pandemic has actually shown that even more, that you can be anywhere and work with somebody in terms of whatever it is: tax prep, tax resolution, exam representation. We're working on an exam case for a guy that lives in Atlanta. I've got resolution clients all around. I've got tax prep clients in all places, which being in Florida, one of the nice things is I don't have to deal with state taxes, but unfortunately, because I have clients that either move from other states or they live in other states, I still have to do many of the state tax returns because of that.
Nature of the beast, but
Yes.
That's fantastic to hear. Welcome to the global economy, everyone. Either you can embrace it or you can't, and I don't know why you wouldn't, especially with what's available to you. Let's see. Fred says, when is the next opening for your program? I tried to join a few months ago, but it was booked up. Fred, hop onto a call, book your slot for later, my friend. So don't worry about availability. You'll find out what the availability is when you're on the phone with Matt. He's got access to what that looks like right now. Robert says he's in Hawaii. That's awesome, Robert. We've got another client, Sylvie, who's in Hawaii right now. Maybe you guys cross paths and say Honolulu. That's not what they say in Hawaii. I don't know what they say in Hawaii.
Aloha.
All right, I think I got just 3 left. Sharon, I need better systems to grow my firm. Booking a call now. Sharon, very much looking forward to having the opportunity to elevate and work with you one-on-one. Arthur, what do I need to get started? Arthur, to Dan's point, you need an open mind to get started, and you need to book your call. That's about it. As long as you're willing to have those 2 things, you'll learn everything else that you need to get started with us. And Oliver says, sounds good. Booked my call. Matt, you're going to be a busy man, and it looks like we are out of time. Dan, any parting shots very quickly here?
I actually wanted to come back to Edgar's question about his first tax season in 10 years. I think that the thing there is, especially when you're a newbie, working with a coach, working with a group, you can kind of learn some of the right ways to do things instead of the wrong ways to do things. It helps with that mindset of changing things. Because I mean, if you think about it, if you've ever had an employee, whether they're working for you or you worked for another firm and they worked under you, and they came in as an experienced person and they had these old habits in there, and you had to try and beat that out of them. So it's the same principle that working with somebody like Tyler can help you learn value pricing, learn time management, learn the right ways to do marketing instead of the wrong ways, and you're wasting time and wasting money. So that's one of the great things that working with you. So thank you, Tyler, for having me. I know I'm a man of so few words when I talk, but hopefully this was helpful to you and to the people out there. And I appreciate the opportunity to be with you.
100%. And thank you for being on this journey with us. And to his point, if you want to shortcut your path to success, we'd love to have the opportunity to help you do just that. So thank you so much, Mr. Dan Henn, the IRS Whisperer, and the newly minted Veganator. Remember, only you can create your dream firm, just like Mr. Dan Henn has, but we are here to help you every single step of the way. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and hope to have you as a part of the Create Your Dream Firm program soon. Talk to you all soon.